absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's All-Star Wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
If that is not the best intro to an AWA-themed wrestling podcast with a former producer, director, and a former ring announcer, and a schmuck like me, then I don't know what is. I think we've got the market cornered on the best open for an AWA-themed podcast.
Hold on.
Yes.
Aren't we the only AWA-themed podcast?
Picky.
I know.
I'm just saying. I mean,
I
love the open. I mean, I did it. I love the open, but I just wanted to...
That we know of. We're the only one that we know of.
Right, yeah.
You know.
Preeminent, baby.
Yes. I love how Joe's like, hey, I like it. It would be even better if Joe's like, hey, I think it's horse shit, but I did it. I did it. It's awful. It sucks. Right. I did it. No,
I do love it. I love it. And of course I'm a little biased, but we're good.
That's okay, because Mick's not a little anything. Let's go.
That's what you think.
That's what she said. Here we go.
Let's do the shilling.
The shilling, yes, of course. Going to take care of the business, if you will. All right. First of all, did I do that right?
Be his business.
Be his business.
Let's get on with the gimmick.
Okay, let's get on with the gimmick. Hey, we do want to, first of all, promote before we get into the show. First of all, TeePublic. Get this out of the way. You can tell I've got a Slick Mick cup. I love it. It's got the best coffee in the world in it because the cup makes the coffee. Okay. Your coffee is not going to taste as good, or if you're going to have your beverage of choice, have it in a Slick Mick Guy cup. This is how Joe drinks his vodka. Correct? By the cup?
You know, in my younger days, I would have probably used a larger cup, but we're good.
Cauldron.
You could probably get an AWA Unleashed cauldron at TeePublic as well. Anything you want to help support your podcasters here. We love our partnership with TeePublic. We also love our Patreon members because we've got our pinfall membership, you guys, $4.99 a month. You get this a day early. You get exclusive watch-alongs. Our last one was Super Clash 2, where we looked at the Nick Bockwinkel, Kurt Henning, Larry Zisco fiasco, which you can get our thoughts on that at that point in time because it was a lot of fun to look at. So we've got that. We've got our exclusive live chats, which now include an opportunity to win some more things via AWA Unleashed trivia. So we've got another chance that you can win more than $4.99, frankly, worth of pictures, or whatever Mick decides that we're going to give away that day. You get access to our exclusive non-AWA Unleashed normal interviews. These are exclusives that we've got. We've talked with James Beard, the fabulous old world-class championship wrestling announcer based out of Dallas. He was fantastic. Ken Anderson was fantastic. Herb Simmons was fantastic. Guess what? If you want to get some BAM, that's coming up. If you want to have the Prince, not the King, you want to hear from the Prince, that is also coming up. So we got a lot of things that are coming up there. Maybe a little bit of X-Pac. Let's see. What else? We got a lot of good things. So I'm not going to give it ease away, but we're going to go ahead and roll with that. So did I leave anything out, you guys? Oh, you do get a handwritten letter from me, and you do get a magnet and a sticker and just a personal thank you from me as well. So we get a lot of things that we've got planned and things that are being implemented, guys. It's not just like, oh, we're going to do it. We're doing it.
Help us out. We'll help you out.
That sounds more like a $9.95 value in my opinion, but $4.99, that's a bargain.
It really is. It really is. It really is. So we ready to do this here?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to let you guys set it up. First of all, this is something that we had talked about for quite some time, but we are finally doing it. And this is about the best talkers. And you guys kind of set this up. Why are we doing this episode? And how did we decide who's going to be on these lists?
I'll kick it off, Joe. The best talkers, it is so subjective. But I think if you look back on the history of the AWA, there's a pretty select list of guys that could cut out or go out and cut a promo. And we talked so many times, it's the promos that get the people into the seats. It gets the asses in the seats, as the old vernacular says, besides the wrestling. So the three of us put our collective minds together, which was a short meeting. But we took a look at our own personal picks, who we thought would be among the best talkers. So you got a conglomeration here of 20 that we consider to be the best promo guys, best talkers in AWA history. And Joe, not in any particular order. And there's a reason for that.
Indeed. And as I look at the list, there's a couple that I would even like to expand and add, but there's got to be a beginning and an end. There were so many talents that came across the AWA screens that, well, I'll give you one example. A Sherry Martel.
Yes.
The Destruction Crew. Larry the Butcher Cameron. And I could go on even further than that, but we've got limited time with unlimited talent that stood in front of a microphone in the AWA. And so here we are. And one other thing I have to add, Mick had asked us, Chris and I, for our top 10 lists. Mm-hmm. Well, I ended up submitting 14. Chris submitted his 10. And when I saw some of the names, I'm like, shit, how could I have forgotten this guy and that guy? I mean, there's, again, so many that have graced the television screen and that we've had the pleasure to watch that you just sort of forget over the years. So
well,
with that, let's get on to it.
Yeah. And just to clarify too, Joe, we've got three different perspectives. When I went with mine, I didn't go with guys that I didn't really see cut interviews. I went with what I remember because I felt it would have been disingenuous for me to say, I remember peak, Larry Henning, or just as an example. So I went by the people that I remember for me. And I assume there are probably going to be more people in that Gen X like I am. But I think it's just great that we've got so many different perspectives. So
not only that, Chris, but you and I and Joe had a lot of crossover. I mean, it's not like we had 20 different names and nobody agreed on anything.
Did we really?
A lot of guys that we absolutely agreed on were shoo-ins. And remember, folks, this is a time of non-scripted promos.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's keep that in mind. And we're not doing it in any particular order because it's all subjective. We didn't want to play favorites here, so let's do it.
Okay. Joe, you go ahead and take it away. I'm taking myself off screen and put the first picture up.
Okay. The very first one on our list. Oh, gosh, what can you say about him other than he was the inspiration for others? We're talking about the superstar Billy Graham.
When he came into the AWA area in the early 1970s, we had not seen anything like Superstar Graham. And man, he was captivating with Marty O'Neill. They were just classic. And as you said, Joe, he set the stage. No question about it.
Yep, he got Jesse the Body Ventura credited him. I'll go as far as say even Hulk Hogan had a little bit of the same type of flair as Superstar Billy Graham. But I will say this, compared, if you put Hogan and Superstar Billy Graham together, Hogan can't hold a candle to his promos, period. So Jesse was damn good and even dressed like him. But the original is, to me, it's just always the best.
Well,
the first time you see him, the first time you hear him, Superstar was incredible.
Well, the man of the hour, the man with the power. It's like he just kind of rolled all of that stuff off, and you believed it because I think it was his body language that also added into it, and that's part of you believe what it is that you're saying, and it was just so smooth and just very. It wasn't like egotistical. It was confidence, and it just flowed really nicely from one thought to the next, to the next, to the next. There was no hemming and hawing and uhs. It was just like boom, 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 boom.
And he was in Technicolor. Let's not forget.
Live and living Technicolor.
There we go.
One last word about him. I got a sense of a little bit of Muhammad Ali style of delivery with Superstar Billy Graham. Very boisterous, self-confident, but they could back it up.
Yeah, and I wish that we had the footage that we could actually show with these interviews, but again, unfortunately, because of copyrights, we do not have access to that. So we are doing what we can to give you the stills and kind of explain it. So if you guys like, well, it would be nice if you had the audio, had the video. Yeah, it would be nice if we have the video, but we don't have the video. So unfortunately, this is the best we could do.
Watch-alongs.
Oh, I see that. Well done, Joe.
Very good.
Picking up what I was throwing down.
Very good.
All righty, go to the next one, Mr. Joseph.
Well, I mean, of course, this guy's on the list. My all-time favorite character, the man who made Milwaukee famous, the one, the only, Wanda's boyfriend. We're talking about the Crusher.
Crusher, I have said before, came into the AWA territory as a heel, and he was a great heel. And he would deliver those promos attacking Vern Gagne, and he was believable, and he was a thug from Milwaukee. In later years, when he became a babyface, of course, it all changed, but my God, his promos were magical. They were funny. They were creative. They were outstanding.
Been hit with barmaids, bar stools, bar rags. I mean, the one-liners. There's the one interview, and it'll be in a future watch along, but where Roger Kent is interviewing him, and Crusher starts singing a little bit, and he goes, "People are going to mistake me for Johnny Cash." I mean, just and it was all unscripted. The beauty, the comedic delivery of the Crusher, none better in my opinion. I just, from an entertainment standpoint, absolutely loved his promos.
Yeah, and see, for me, I had him on my list. I didn't see a lot of the promos, but the ones that I have seen, I found incredibly entertaining. So I didn't see some of the early stuff where he was targeting Vern, but just the comedic one-liners, the quippiness, the just being able to think on your feet. That's why he was on my list, even though, again, a very, very small sample size that I've got to work with.
Here's what we need to do, in the words of the Crusher. Next summer, we're going to go fishing on Lake Minnetinky. We're going to get all of the dollies. They're going to be wearing their bikinis. I mean,
that's correct.
Just masterful.
And when the fish comes up to get the beer, you hit him with a sledgehammer. That's how you catch a fish.
I missed that. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to go look it up.
Great stuff. All right.
Moving on to our next. Well, it's not an individual. It's actually a group. These three transformed tag team wrestling. Yes, I know it's three, and I said tag team, but we're talking about the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. Now, I just have to say, when I submitted my list, I didn't put the Road Warriors. I put Hawk, because in my opinion, of the three, Hawk was the one that was most entertaining to me. It's not taking anything away from Animal or Precious Paul, but Hawk was the one that I truly loved out of these three.
I would agree with you. And when I saw Chris's list, where you had the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering, I thought, you know what, we got to put them up all together. Hawk, of course, you know, Christmas is just another day to beat people up. His famous line, Animal, with his, you know, tell him, big man. And Precious Paul with the Wall Street Journal. They were magic, and you really can't separate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't care.
That's right.
My thing was, I knew they were good, and I knew that Hawk did most of it. But to me, like Paul Ellering being able to complement, just like brought it to a whole nother level. The LOD, the WWF, WWE version, I thought was watered down, especially when they brought in that fucking puppet, whatever, the Rocco. I mean, complete bullshit. To me, it's like Precious Paul was like the evil mastermind behind the muscle. And I think that's the impression that I got. And that's why, for me, I had to include Paul Ellering in it.
Very good. Well said, Chris. So there you go.
The mid-'80s version of the Road Warriors, second to none, in my opinion, for effect in the business. Mm-hmm. Sadly, demons, shall we say, watered them down by the time the 90s came around. Yeah. But, and time. I mean, it affects a lot of us, and especially back then. But the Road Warriors, oh, man. And by the way, those watch-alongs that I mentioned before, there might be an entire episode devoted to the Road Warriors. Tease, hint.
I'm telling you guys, these watch-alongs, you will love them.
Yes.
I'm once you do it, I'm telling you, they're like a Pringles. You can't just have one, right? Like once you see a watch-along, these things are so much fun. If you just want the goofiness on top of the old school footage,
right, you're
not going to get it anywhere else other than with the three of us. And for $5 a month, I mean, you pay $5 for that alone. There, I mean, it's well worth it. Well
said. Well said.
Well, I'm gonna weasel on into this conversation and set up our next talent. I've said this many times on this podcast. The single greatest all-around performer in the history of the business, Bobby the Brain Heenan.
There's no doubt that if we would have been listing these guys in order, there would have been two guys, number one and number two. It would have been Bobby and the guy that he managed. But you said it, Joe. What can you say about Bobby Heenan? This guy was so freaking, it was a genius when you put the microphone in front of him. Everything was off the cuff. You would never know what he was going to say, how he was going to insult somebody, whether it was Greg Gagne or Laurent Soucy. Laurent Soucy's parents had 9 months to come up with a name, and that's the best they could do. That was, oh my God, that was one of my favorites. But God love Bobby, unparalleled, unmatched,
and I don't know how many times I've heard it. from people in the office, from people who were around Bobby, not only the best talent, and those are my words, but he was so quick-witted. You did not want to get into a war of words with Bobby Heenan. He would smack you down and put you in your place very quickly.
Yeah. So what you saw on camera was really who he was.
Oh, Bobby was that quick off camera as well. Oh, he'd slice and dice you, Chris.
Man. Yeah. And I realized, like, as I'm looking through the list, the top 10 are all mine. And then
exactly. So, that's why you got a lot of crossover.
It's all of ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, you just copied and pasted mine and then just added a few extras. Okay, well this is good because I don't want this to be my opinion because we know what people think of my opinion. So we will move on. But yes, I do like Bobby Heenan, and then of course you guys mentioned the GOAT coming up next.
None other than the man from Beverly Hills, California, who was managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan. We're talking about Slick Nick Bockwinkel.
The man from Beverly Hills by way of St. Louis, Nick Bockwinkel. You know, when Nick came here, the thing that got me hooked was his interview style. And, you know, it's funny because you'll read a lot of reviews of Nick from other people, and they'll talk about his interviews and how he used $1 million words. Remember, Nick came out with a little dictionary right before he would cut a promo, and he would look up those $1 million words just to have something ready to go. But there was no screaming, no yelling. It was just straightforward 8 to 5 humanoid, white Soxer lifers.
Cretinous humanoids.
Cretinous humanoid. And it got people into the building.
Yeah. You said GOAT.
No doubt.
He deserves to be at the top of many lists.
Yep. Yeah, he could do it on his own, and then you added Bobby Heenan as a different part.
Magic.
And then I will say our last watch along at Super Clash 2, I saw a different side of Nick Bockwinkel with an interview that I had never seen before. Right. And I thought just being able to be that person, but yet have those two different interview styles, but not change who you are, I thought was very interesting. And if you watch our last, if you're a member and you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to see what I'm talking about, hey, just become a Pinfall member, and you'll see our last watch along Super Clash 2. See exactly what it is that I'm talking about at the end of that match.
All right.
So our next guy, we have made a reference to him a little bit earlier, and he even says that he copied our first name. We're talking about the bodyguard to the Rolling Stones, Lola Falana's boyfriend, the former governor of the great state of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura.
Jesse ran late for an interview session one evening, and of course he explained to me and Gene that he was partying with Farrah Fawcett, and that's why he couldn't make it in. Jesse was such a huge fan of superstar Billy Graham. Even before he got into the business, he would dress like him. He would strut like him down the halls of the Minneapolis Auditorium. We've said many times on this program, and I think Jesse would be the first to admit, as a wrestler, as a technical wrestler, not so much. As a talker, absolutely one of the greatest of all time.
Tough to argue. How
did Billy Graham react to Jesse copying him? Was there ever any contact between the two that we know of?
You know, I don't know specifically, but I thought I had heard that Jesse asked Billy if it was okay. I mean, he had that much respect for him.
I mean, because if there's that much, wanting to adopt what somebody's personality and basically everything about their gimmick, I know that people are very protective. I just always wondered that when we make the comparison between the two, like what were Billy Graham's feelings about it if you guys had had heard anything at all.
I had heard that Billy was pretty well. He was flattered
Correct.
that Jesse wanted to emulate him. So I don't think there was any heat at
Okay.
all.
No,
Okay.
I heard the exact same thing. That I don't want to say honored, but the fact that what's the phrase? Something about the sincerest form of flattery. You know.
Oh yeah.
Imitation is the most
Yeah.
sincere form of flattery. Yeah.
Correct. And you know, Jesse did it great. It was a different territory they were in different territories when Jesse came here. Superstar had left, then Jesse came. Superstar came back with that just horrible karate gimmick, but nonetheless, Jesse is on our list, and our next guy would really take his time at the start of a match.
Oh,
We're talking about we're going to Larryland. Larry Zisco.
You know what was great about Larry, and we've got him on this all-time great talkers list.
Joe, you're such a spudhead.
Oh, he is. He absolutely is. You know, Larry in the ring would stall, but my God, you put a microphone in front of him, and he just rambled, and it flowed, and there was nobody was over as a heel just on the basis of putting down the fans, calling them spudheads, or denigrating the state of Minnesota, wherever he might have appeared, than Larry.
Larry, I had wondered back in the day if Larry could have ever been a babyface in the AWA. And very quickly, my answer to myself was not a chance.
No.
I loved Larry outside the ring, nice guy. Loved working with Larry. As a wrestler in the AWA, you couldn't help but just despise him, from his stalling tactics to his self-arrogance, and hated the guy on camera, loved the guy off camera.
You know, and they switched him to a heel real quickly in New York. You know, he was mentored by Bruno Sammartino as a babyface, very milquetoast. But man, when he turned heel, the green light was on.
He's the first guy that I can remember what they call getting that cheap heat. From insulting the fans and the cities that they're in. I mean, I know that's pretty common for heels nowadays to try and get themselves over that way. He was really the first one that I remember that did that. And now it might have been before, but that's my era. I don't remember people really doing that prior to Larry Zisco.
Oh, he was phenomenal. Absolutely. And I would agree with you, Chris. If not the first to do it, one of the first, no doubt.
So we're going to go get a little rabid here next on our list. We're going to need a leash. We're going to need some dog bones. We're going to need to go deep into the mine. Make my body strong. Maurice Mad Dog Vachon.
Let's not forget the obligatory fire hydrant, just in case Mad Dog has to take a break. During his promos. Legendary. For those who did not see the dog as a heel in the AWA, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, this guy came across literally as a mad dog, vicious, spitting, growling, when he would feud with Crusher or Vern Gagne, what have you. And then as a babyface, he didn't change the interview style, not at all. But that was the impact when he would get into the ring with a Fatwell or whatever. Absolute greatness in Mad Dog Vachon.
Yeah. Eloquent? No. Wild? Uncontrollable? Yep. Maurice.
Never heard the word eloquent with Mad Dog.
Oh, and he did. To me, that's a whole Mad Dog. He came off like a mad dog. And admittedly, again, he was on my list because of just a couple of interviews that I saw. Not a whole bunch, but a lot of this is predicated, especially on the Pine Box. That is my favorite AWA promo of all time. And just based on that one alone, everything else could have been crap, but based on that one, he was personally on my list.
And you know, Mad Dog, not only for the promos, you get a guy in the ring that's biting and scratching and clawing and everything else and hopping around the ring like a kangaroo on steroids.
Yeah.
That was Mad Dog Vachon.
That's who he was, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's so believable that
Yes.
that was it. There was no separation.
There you go.
Well, as long as we're going the route of uncontrollable, wild, absolutely insane, shall we say, this next talent, Bruiser Brody, when he came onto the scene into the AWA, legitimately scared the shit out of me. And by this point, I was 18 years old.
You know, when you're 6'6" and damn near 300 pounds, and you're coming across like a wild, uncontrollable nutcase like Brody did, legendary. And it's interesting, if you look at his promos, he didn't say a lot. He didn't ramble on, but everything was intense. Everything was just so fucking believable. And you watch him in Japan. If you think he was nuts here in Japan, and again, when I told you, you know, I interviewed him in Winnipeg before we went out, the nicest, most soft-spoken guy in the world. Turn that camera on, and there you go.
A legitimate genius.
Yes,
in his promos, in my opinion.
Very much.
He did it. He did it so much more. What did he tap into that nobody else could? Being that big, wild man, but you know, being wild and out of control, but at the same time, just being measured with his thoughts. Done.
And this guy is a former newspaper reporter. I mean, you just, you know, he's sitting at an office in a typewriter back in the day, and all of a sudden, you got Bruiser Brody the next day. Amazing guy.
Yeah, it's like our version of Clark Kent.
There you go. Perfect.
I mean, Chris, the thing you have to remember with Brody is he was a loose cannon. When he went into a territory, you didn't pin him legitimately.
Never.
Part of the mystique, the aura of Bruiser Brody or King Kong Brody was that he was this uncontrollable nut job. And when he came into the AWA as a hired henchman, it was believable times 10, because you didn't beat Bruiser Brody. You just went in and hoped you didn't get killed against Bruiser Brody.
Legendary.
And the guy that brought him in is the next man on our list. The dastardly man who paid a lot of money to Bruiser Brody, who paid a lot of money to Jerry Blackwell, our dear friend, Sheikh Adnan Al-Kaisi.
Sheikh Adnan, the camel, the caravan will go on despite the barking of the dogs. They're still waiting in Baghdad for the big celebration when he comes back with the world championship. The man that said that Jerry Blackwell was not able to attend an interview session because he was getting a massage. And of course, it took two because he has such a big back, you know. And the man, of course, who endeared himself to me by big crotch. How's your crotch? Love the guy. Love Adnan.
You know, Adnan's interviews didn't have the eloquence of a Nick Bockwinkel, didn't have the quick wit of a Bobby Heenan, didn't have the ferociousness of a Mad Dog or a Bruiser Brody, but because he was so hated with that I mean, first of all, being from Baghdad, Iraq, but he had that evil smile to him. He came out with that sword, KC, KC, KC. He was, put it this way, Adnan was the first wrestler to make you want to cheer for Nick Bockwinkel, unless you're Nick Karch, of course. But that's how hated Adnan LKC was, and all of that combined, and his very good interview style puts him on our list.
And it's not even sometimes like what he says, but like you mentioned, Joe, just the smile, the smirk. Sometimes it's the body language and the nonverbal that can tell you more about somebody. It's like when the body says one thing, but the mind says another. That's where I feel like it hooks me, because you can say it, but I know what your real intention is.
The evil foreign menace. Absolutely. The stereotypical.
Yeah.
God bless Adnan. God, I miss that guy. Okay.
The next one on our list has got a fat wife and 9 kids at home, and he's got to feed them. Talk about wild and out of control, like we did with Bruiser Brody. Our next guy tagged with Brody in Japan. Can you imagine the shit that went down in Japanese wrestling rings? Of course. Former AWA champion, former championship belt driver over with the car man, Stan, the Lariat Hansen, the wild man from Borger, Texas.
Who in their right mind would put a world title on this guy and expect it to last any length of time? Stan Hansen, again, legendary, and we still see Stan at the various fan conventions. He's such a great guy. But talk about out of control, again, like Brody, especially you look at those Japanese tapes where Stan would come out swinging that cowbell, and my God, he could not see a foot in front of him, literally. And if you were within any distance of that cowbell, you were taking your life in your hands. Stan Hansen with that tobacco, that chew running down his cheek, nobody liked Big Stan.
Yeah, unlike Larry Zisco, who took forever to start a match, Stan would start a match before the introductions, before the referee checking the belt line and the boots. So he was the wild man from Borger, Texas.
And as you said, put him together with Brody. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Like the stuff in Japan, I'm just thinking about it now. And some of the, I mean, obviously not all AWA, but I think about Brody and Hansen and Dr. Death and Terry Gordy and the Steiners and the Road Warriors, not to mention all of the Japanese talent. Like that's some heavy-handed shit right there.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yep. Our next guy actually has been accused, or actually more of a self-proclaimed movie star. He looked an awful lot like, well, according to him, George Clooney. According to Jesse, he looked like E.T. We're talking about our dear friend, Baron von Rashka.
How could you look at this picture and not think George Clooney? That's the first thing that comes to mind. Outside of the fact, I counted the Baron's teeth in this picture, and he does have more than I do. But that is, and you know, look at his cheeks, his upper face. Something must have happened there. The Baron, either he got a sunburn, something happened where he's all worked up there. That is the face of an absolute movie idol. One of the greatest talkers in the history of the business. And again, fans, a lot of you don't know the Baron as a heel. Another foreign menace. And you hated the Baron. He would come out goose stepping when he turned babyface. Beloved everywhere he went. And
dare I say, he could have one of the most memorable closing lines of any promo. I mean, it's been on T-shirts. People still to this day. And that is all the people need to know.
And he actually made some money when he sold his T-shirts.
Oh, wow. Two questions about Baron. Number one, how did he become a babyface? How was that done? And were his interviews better as a heel or a babyface? I've got that, and then I want to ask about his final line.
He became a babyface, I think, primarily, Chris, because of longevity. You know, I've mentioned that before. Guys like Crusher and Mad Dog, and even Nick, they come in as heels. You're in a territory for 15, 20 years. You grow on the fans, and then it's always there's somebody that you hate more than Baron von Raschke.
How could you hate a Nazi German evil? I mean, how? Well, that goes into another subject, but I mean, how could you like approve of somebody who's just a morally despicable person?
Well, you know, I think as time went on, the Baron stopped goose stepping so much, and it was more of doing this.
Okay.
You know, and he abandoned that cape that he had with the Iron Cross on it. So you kind of tend to forget those things. And again, you know, it's wrestling. You know, you let enough time go by, nobody remembers.
Yeah, I mean, he still kept. Of course, my dog's going nuts at the neighbors now. Baron still did the whole goose stepping thing, just not to the degree.
Yeah.
And as Mick said, he lost the whole Iron Cross cape. But as far as his promos go, a little bit of levity and comedy got added into his promos when he became a babyface, and that just helped endear him even more to the fans.
Very similar to what happened with Crusher.
Yeah.
You know, you inject that humor a little bit, and you've grown on the fans, and all of a sudden you're everybody's favorite. But what a guy! Oh my God, the Baron! What a guy outside the ring.
Okay, so now I got a follow up. That's all the people need to know. How did that line come about? Because it's really popular, but like, how did that become a thing?
I don't know. Did he just improvise it one night, Joe? I would assume.
Well, when you're getting the wrap up on a promo and your mind sort of blanks at the end on how to finish it, you literally come up with, oh shit. And that is all the people need to know. Literally, that's how he developed that catchphrase, and it stuck with every promo for the
unbelievable. Okay, fascinating. Okay, I was just curious. I thought there was some sort of story to it, but I didn't know what it was.
You know, and if you run out of things to say and you go to that catchphrase, shit, you and I and Chris should be saying that every week about 2 minutes in to the podcast. But
that's how I'm opening up every show from now on.
That's right. Okay, who's next?
Who's next? He was involved in, well, I'll just say it, the most distasteful angle in AWA history against Derek Dukes. But take that aside, his delivery and ability to talk on the mic was masterful. We're talking about Colonel De Beers.
Our good friend, Easy Ed Wiskoski, Colonel De Beers. There was no ranting or raving in Colonel De Beers' interviews. But like you said, Joe, it was the delivery and it was what he was saying. I mean, this guy was coming across as a legitimate white supremacist. When he talked, whether he was going to wrestle Jimmy Snuka or Derek Dukes, it didn't matter. He did not want to get into the ring with a non-Caucasian. He was methodical in his interview delivery, but because of what he was saying, a lot of people say the promos of Colonel De Beers left a lasting impact on them. So you got to put him in one of the top promo guys of all time.
Do we ever know how again, it goes into feel, and this might be, something that, hopefully we'd be able to talk to him about it, but how did he feel? Do we know, like, when you come up with something that racially charged, I mean, was there any apprehension do we know about that he had with that?
Not that I ever heard
Just
of.
business, just you do it because it's your job.
This is your gimmick, and he
Yeah.
played into it so well, whether it was twisting the mustache or coming out with that.
Yeah.
And remember, this guy was a babyface before. He wrestled as the Polish Prince for the WWF. So a multi-talented guy,
Okay.
and he made an impact, no doubt, especially on Derek Dukes.
Yeah. The next man on our list, I'll say the earlier version of him in the AWA, promo-wise, not so much. It was later on when, as we watched in our watch-along, Mr. Perfect Curt Henning, when that persona was created, Curt Henning was magic on the mic.
I gotta laugh at this picture. Like, it doesn't even look like him.
I'll tell you, that picture is cut off. What he's doing in this photograph, legitimately, he's looking down at a midget who is threatening to hit him in the nuts. That is, honest to God, that is what he is doing. And I guess that's an appropriate expression. Curt Hennig, you watch those early babyface interviews, especially when he first broke in, and oh my God, get me a no-dose. Curt was one of the classic white bread baby faces, and as Joe said, that evolution, that transformation into Mr. Perfect. Oh my God! And when he, especially in the AWA, when he could improvise and just say whatever he wanted about Greg Gagne or whoever, unreal.
No doubt. And one of my talk about the Nick Bockwinkles of the world, I'm going to put Curt Hennig in that same class, and Bobby Heenan, as far as all around talent. They could do it on the mic, they could do it in the ring, they could do it on commentary. Fantastic talent.
Yeah, and you were talking about kind of Curt making that transition. Admittedly, the early stuff I didn't think was all that great. I didn't put him on my list because a lot of the stuff that I saw was the Mr. Perfect, like in WWF. That's really where, like, and kind of like we've said on this show. But I think, again, to go back to the watch along, we were talking about Nick Bockwinkel, that whole scenario, how that was set up and how it transpired. I thought I saw something from Curt in terms of the babyface heel riding that line. He did something that I don't think I've ever seen from anybody before. And I just thought it was so well done. And I have to say that was probably one of the highlights that I can remember out of Curt Hennig and his promos in the AWA was what we saw in that watch along.
When Curt made the transition to heel, he wasn't in the AWA a long time as a heel. It was, at most a couple of years, but he was already developing that edge, that attitude. Greg Gagne, you got a neck like a stack of dimes. Did you see my father, Larry Hennig, pull Vern Gagne out of his penny loafers? It was the beginning of, as Joe says, perfection, no doubt.
Yeah. And the next guy on our list, I'll say had the same type of mic skill trajectory as Curt Hennig. Because when he first came into the AWA, he needed a manager, albeit for a short term. And even when he went on his own on the promos, his interviews, quite honestly, sucked. But we all know where this guy went. Think what you want about him. His microphone skills back in the day were incredible.
I have mixed feelings about Hogan. You can't argue with the success and the promo guy that he was. But if you listen to the promos, this is where I would draw a distinction between he and Bobby Heenan or he and Nick. His promos were basically the same.
Yeah.
Whether it was talking about, saying your prayers and eating your vitamins or whatever it was, they didn't change much from opponent to opponent. He didn't have to. So in his defense, there was no reason to get, all flamboyant or flowery. And certainly, one of the greatest Impact players that ever lived. You can't have a promo list without Hulk Hogan.
I agree with you 100%. I think I had him when I sent in my list. I think I included him in there, but it was in the secondary list because his promos, they weren't special. Like as you alluded to, it was cookie cutter. It was the same, say your prayers, take your vitamins, blah, blah, blah. It just impactful, changed the industry. Yep. If I had the top 20 list, I don't know that I'd have Hogan on there, to be honest, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the same reason why you can, talk about Ric Flair and why you can make the case that Ric Flair isn't the GOAT is because everything was the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ric Flair is great, and I know it's not part of this conversation. But when you talk about somebody being one of the best of all time, that also includes versatility and the ability to adapt. Now, I did see that it said Hulkamania established 1984. You guys, your buddy Juice, Gary DeRusha, helped coin Hulkamania. Was that prior to 1984? Is that T-shirt wrong? Is that WWE propaganda?
If no, Hulkamania was already in the AWA. So Juice is telling the truth. He planted the seed.
Oh, no. I'm saying that, but it's like Hogan said 84. It's like the T-shirt said 84. It should have been before 84.
Absolutely.
Late 82, early. Late 82 is really when it started in the AWA.
And that's why I wanted to give Juice I wanted to give him his flowers because I saw established 1984. Yeah, that was beating Sheik at the Garden, that was not when it actually started.
Not according to the WWF. Everything started in 1984. Nothing prior.
Whole nother story. Moving on. Now, the next guy, I have to admit, I don't remember seeing his early promos, so this is going to be a Mick name just by me saying that. And I did work with him. He had his own segment with the AWA in the later years, and he was very good. We're talking about Stan Don't Call Me the Big K Kowalski.
Stan Kowalski as a heel, as a wrestler, delivered great promos, and they were no nonsense. There was nothing elaborate about Stan's promos. He would come out and he would basically cut down Vern Gagne or whoever he might be getting into the ring with in his fashion. Vern Gagne, I'm going to put you in a wheelchair. I'm going to send you out to pasture. I'm the greatest wrestler ever to come out of the state of Minnesota, not Vern Gagne. When he managed guys like Ivan Koloff or Kobayashi in his later years, and he was the mouthpiece for both of those guys, again, it's that old story. You got an American traitor, basically. Why are you aligning yourselves with a guy like Kobayashi? But he would say, the training regimen in Japan, or as Stan would say, the way these guys work in Japan, they got nothing. American guys got nothing on them. It was really, really great. And when Stan would shoot, when he would shoot on Vern Gagne or whoever, you knew the difference between Stan just cutting a promo and when he was going deep on Vern Gagne.
Our next guy is from the same era at the time. I've talked about his laugh outside of the ring, that guttural, infectious laugh. But this man, Ray the Crippler Stevens, now he didn't have the quick wit like a Bobby Heenan. He didn't have the eloquence of a Nick Bockwinkel. The memories that I have of Ray cutting a promo were like, if you were to get into a barroom brawl with somebody and then Ray would spew his to you. It was no nonsense, straight in your face. And one of my favorite lines in a promo when he's talking about Billy Robinson, he referred to him as the cockeyed coal miner.
Ray, what he would watch a Ray Stevens interview. He comes out and Ray is like talking out of the side of his mouth all the time. His promo style was just like that. And how can you not love a guy who says, I not only hate Larry Hennig, I hate his wife, I hate his kids, and I hate his dog.
Oh,
So God bless Ray Stevens.
Who hates
All-time
somebody's
great.
dog? Like you're hating a pet. I mean, that's
Maybe
that's,
the dog. Maybe the dog bit Ray. Who knows? We don't know the backstory there. It
yeah,
could have
that's
been.
true. That's true.
oh, talk about wild. We're going to take a trek to the Pampas.
Oh,
And we're talking about the wild bull of the Pampas, Pomo Furo.
he had the two greatest lines. You know, it is I, it is me, it is Pomo Furo. Oh yeah. And when he was a heel or a baby face here in the AWA, and he started out as a hated heel, and then, as we've said before, so many of the heels that grow on you, Pomo Furo became a baby face. Interview style did not change all that much. The Crusher accused Pomo of course, having lice and lizards and mice and everything else in his hair, to gain an advantage. And as I've said before, Pomo is in a tag match against the Valiants. Loser leave town. Pomo went over and left town. So I'm not sure that he quite understood the rules there. Maybe they weren't written in pompon, but nonetheless, an all-time great.
Now, you said his two lines, and the second one being, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a guy who came around later who did okay for himself in the business by the name of Randy Macho Man Savage, who did the, oh, yeah. Where do you think he got that from? Put his own little spin on it, but he got that from Pomo Furo.
He did. He credited Pomo Furo with that.
Oh,
line.
I had no idea that he credited. I just really like how you did the Alexis thing from Schitt's Creek, the Annie Murphy. It's like, oh yeah. You put your hands
Nice
up like,
job,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice job.
Oh,
What's your Macho Man? Do it again.
oh yeah.
You sound like you're constipated.
Oh,
I do need to eat more salad, I think. But
Yeah.
Another podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. I'm having an attack on this next guy.
Ooh.
No, it's not a constipation attack. It's an axe attack. Larry the Axe Henning.
One of the greatest promo guys in the history of the AWA. And I will go to my grave saying that. Larry's so unrated or underrated. As a baby face early on, he showed an edge to him, but not so much. When he turned heel, he would cut the absolute greatest promos. Again, on Vern Gagne, we got a recurring theme here. But Larry would cut the greatest heel promos. And then as a baby face, when he would get into a feud with Angelo King Kong Mosca, and Larry would come out just like a kid on a kindergarten playground. He would name call, Angelo Ping Pong, Monkey Man, Banana Ears. He would go through the whole gamut of nicknames for Angelo Mosca. But Larry had the size and the believability, and one of the great talkers, legit. And he's an auctioneer. It kind of transformed too. That was Larry Hennig. He was a talker.
Always comfortable on camera.
Yes.
Never had any inhibitions. Never once got nervous because there's a camera on him or lights or a microphone in front of him. Larry just delivered.
Yep.
Yeah, and I admittedly, again, I knew he was good. I knew he was one of the best, but I never saw it. So I didn't put him on my list. I knew that he would be on there. But again, I felt like I would have been disingenuous if I would have put him on just based on the fact that I didn't see it. Or even the next person who is also a Hall of Fame talker, but I didn't see it. So based on what we're talking about, I know he's on your guys' list. I didn't put him on, but if we're talking about all time, he's definitely, near the top of the list.
Chris, you and I talked about this before Mick came on, and I didn't have him on my list either, not because he didn't deserve to be. Quite honestly, it's because I forgot. Because his big run in the AWA was when I was really young, and then he left. Came back, did a couple of spots here and there with the AWA, but primarily he was an NWA talent. But because he spent quite a few years here, shall we say that he lived the dream? He lived the American dream? The American dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, you did it again, pal. You're
Well,
you're the Rich Little of podcasts, and emphasis on the little.
Very little.
Dusty Rhodes. This is a no-brainer. No matter what territory you were, although they kind of watered him down, of course, when they gave him the polka dots when he went to WWF. Dusty Rhodes delivered the greatest promos in wrestling on such a consistent basis. You could argue that his heyday, of course, when he was, down in the Georgia territory. For me, in the AWA as a heel, when he came in, he was magic. My favorite promo of Dusty Rhodes, and this goes way, way back, guys. Nick Bockwinkel had walked out on Dusty Rhodes in a tag team match where they were the heels, and Dusty cut a promo. And if you can imagine this, they just zoomed in on a tight close-up shot of Dusty's face. And he wasn't ranting. He wasn't raving. It was the quietest promo I've ever heard Dusty deliver. And he just basically said, Nick Bockwinkel, there's loyalty in this business. You disloyal, you disrespected me, and now you're going to pay in blood. And it was so damn effective. One of the greatest, period. Top 5, top 3 ever, no doubt.
The magic that I found in the likes of a Dusty, of a Nick Bockwinkel, trying to think of a couple of others that were on here, were not, they didn't come on camera screaming from the get-go. They yelled when they needed to. They were pissed when they needed to be. They were an incredible talent, just coming on camera, talking, setting themselves up, and then getting into the promo and turning it up a notch, turning it into that promo. It was taking you on the ride within a promo like they were able to do during a match. That was a magic on a lot of these guys. A couple of them that we mentioned, the Hulk Hogans of the world, cookie cutter type of a thing, but the Dusty Rhodes, the Larry Hennings, hell, even the Baron von Raschkes of the world, Nick Bockwinkel, even Jesse. It was magic on the mic. And I hope you guys agree with our top 20.
And again, I would say non-scripted. That to me is the key.
Yes.
They did not have cue cards. They weren't doing this backstage. The lights turned on, the camera turned on, and it was off and running.
Well, and Joe, you were talking about they just kind of went out there. They didn't yell. They didn't scream. If I'm going to believe that this person is what I'm seeing on TV, they're not going to yell 24 hours a day. Like, you are going to talk and you are going to use your normal voice. Sometimes you're going to be softer. Sometimes you're going to be louder. Sometimes you're going to be angry. I don't want somebody who's going to come in and rant and rave, because that's not believable. It's like, well, when that camera's off, are you still ranting and raving and yelling about everything? No, you're not. So that kind of takes me out of it. It up and down, the voice, the projection. It needs to. I need that roller coaster in order to really believe that what you're telling me is what I should feel.
It humanizes the guys, Chris. You're absolutely right. You can feel it. And again, professional wrestling is a loud business, almost too loud with some of the promo guys. So you lose the effect of this is believable, and you see it as all show. with the Box and the Heenans and the Dusties of the world. You didn't see that. You believed it. And it was a different era, different time, and these are the best of the best.
Before we get into our shout outs, I do have to add in one thing that I think we've overlooked, and that is what complemented all of these wrestlers. I'm talking about the guys who are holding the stick, the microphone, talking about the Marty O'Neills, the Mean Gene Okerlunds. Next in line, you're talking about the Ken Resnicks, and then the Larry Nelsons, hell, even the Mick Karches of the world. You don't see a stick man really doing the promos like they used to. I mean, they've got some backstage stuff, but they're short little rehearsed 30, 45-second promos rather than a full-length type of interview. And to me, the best to ever do it, at least to complement it, was Mean Gene Okerlund. He became this character. Marty O'Neill was a straight guy. Then you had Mean Gene come in, and he became, he was Gene Okerlund. Then he became Mean Gene Okerlund, the character. But the interactions that Gino would have with, like, the Crusher, like the one interview where they're talking about some card, and then Crusher or Mean Gene talks about one of Crusher's gals, and Crusher goes, "I want to introduce you to Stella Wendowski. You'd like her." And I mean, just that interaction during those days, dare I say, helped make these. Hell, even bringing in Marty O'Neill or Wally Carbo. How much are you weigh? Just that interaction helped a lot of these guys get over on their promos.
Well, Mick, I want to ask you, kind of with Joe, to kind of follow up. During these interviews, and I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because this kind of sparked a question for me. Did you ever lead guys along in their interviews? Were you told ahead of time where they were going to go and you helped lead them there? Or how did that work?
In the AWA, no. I didn't do a lot of in-ring promos in the AWA, but I did some. I had a basic idea of the point that I wanted to get across. Vern and Greg never actually scripted me. They just said, such and such a Medusa's going over, go in the ring and interview her. When I was doing SNR, even the veteran talents, I would lead them through it because I knew what I wanted to get across. To Joe's point about the Marty O'Neill and Gene Okerlund, again, it's generational because Gene became part of what was sports entertainment. He fit right in. He was the carnival barker. Marty O'Neill, all 5'6" of them, would ask one question or introduce a guy, hand on the microphone, and that was it until he said, "Run, don't walk" to get your tickets. So it's a whole different ball game, but each in their own way, classic stuff.
But with Marty, like you had said, he basically was a mic stand.
Yes.
He did it so well. He set it up wonderfully and was this really tiny guy that made the Mad Dogs and the Crushers look like they're 6 foot tall, when in reality they might be 5'8". So perfect back in the day.
And Chris, just to go on your point, as far as my stuff is concerned, I look at some of the tapes where I tried the Gene Okerlund eyes a little bit, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm thinking of myself.
What do you mean Gene Okerlund eyes? What do you mean by that?
I mean, in terms of, doing the takes to the camera or, interacting, going back and forth with the guys or, come on, Jesse, whatever it might be. Sometimes it worked for me. Sometimes I'll look at it and go, you know what? I really didn't need to do that. Let the guys be the guys. But again, it's all subjective, and you hopefully can sell a few tickets.
Yep.
So there you go.
All right. Well, let's get a shout out and get the heck up out of he's there. So who? I think Joe. Do you go? No, Mick goes first.
Let's go with Jane Amundsen. Jane the Brave.
Let's go with her.
One of my favorite people in the world, Jane over there in Wisconsin. God bless her, man. She's fought through some real health issues over the years. She was a mainstay at Ropers and Fridley, got in the face of a lot of the guys, and is loyal to us as anybody. So love to Jane.
And my shout out goes to Alan Tellers, another one of our AWA Unleashed Army on our Facebook page. Thanks for being a listener, Alan.
And mine is going to go to John Beckstrom, a recent Patreon, a Pinfall member. Took part in his first live chat a couple of months ago, told me that he loved it. And so thank you, John, for not only becoming a member, but also putting us over as well. And if you want to become a member, again, just sign up, the Pinfall membership. We were talking about the live chat. We've been talking about the watch-alongs. Like, the watch-along is also a pretty good way that you can get to complement some of these conversations. Because if we're talking about something, we're like, hey, yeah, we saw it in the watch-along. Or if Joe's like, hey, we might have this coming up on a watch-along. It's a nice complimentary piece to what you're getting here. So you can get more out of this if you have that kind of as a study guide. I think is that fair to say?
Absolutely perfect. No question about it. Best value anywhere. And we did trivia the other night, and it was a blast. So we're going to do more of that. In closing, I know I speak for all of us, and I know you guys are going to speak your piece as well. This is a year, if you've got family and friends around that are safe, and you've got a nice warm place and a warm meal, and you can shut out the rest of the noise out in the world and enjoy your Thanksgiving. You are truly blessed.
May your Thanksgiving be less of a gobbledygooker and more of a Jake the Milkman Milliman turkey on a pole.
Wow.
Why?